Okay, reading the story of the wise and foolish builders. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against the house. Yet it did not fall, because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like the foolish man who built his house on the sand. The rain came down, and the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash. When Jesus had finished saying these things, the crowds were amazed at his teaching, because he taught as one who had authority and not as their teachers of the law.
Shalom Havarim. Hello, friends. We started off with this big, Bible school kind of opening. We had that "Give Me a J" kind of call to worship. We had the Bible school song about building on the rock, and I think it's appropriate because today we're celebrating. So we're trying to bring a little energy here this morning on this Sunday, on this not cold, but rainy Sunday morning. We have reason to celebrate. Do you know why? Because today, after what seems like 17 years, we are finishing the Sermon on the Mount. Yeah, that means that next week we get to go to chapter 8. We'll do a little figuring out there whether we move on to the next chapter or not next week, because I do hope to do a back-to-school celebration either next week or the week after that. Yeah! But today we are turning to this foundational teaching of Jesus, where he talks about where we're supposed to build our lives, why we're supposed to build upon this rock. And as I was thinking about this, it took me to a website as I do my deep research looking for jokes of the day. And I found a number of jokes that seemed appropriate for you this morning. So as a part of our celebration, as a conclusion of the Sermon on the Mount, we're not only going to celebrate communion today, we're going to open up with not one, not two, but a trinity of jokes. Okay, you can handle that? All right, you clap now. We'll see. And just a reminder, this didn't really happen. These are not true. This is a joke or three jokes, okay? You got that? So I had a rough week. See how fast I turned that on? Had a rough week, and thankfully I have that kind of friend that I can always go to and have conversations with, full of wisdom, full of empathy, full of these kind of short phrases that can help you kind of lift up your spirits. So I went to my friend and I explained some of my challenges, and he's like always, he came back to me with this story. It was very helpful. And he said to me, "Kevin, don't worry. When one door closes, another door opens." And I thought that was really helpful. He is a great friend, but a terrible carpenter. We're going somewhere. We're going to build. I knew it was going to start off weak. We'll go get better. Also, another one that didn't happen. You know, I grew up on a farm, and growing up on the farm, you learn how to use tools. And we often did repairs, and that's where I learned to use a hammer, learned how to use a drill. And growing up with my two brothers, we often were out on the farm doing these various repairs. So we had a nickname for my little brother. We called him Lightning with a Hammer. So anytime we were out there hammering things, we would call my brother Brian. We said, "Brian, you are lightning with a hammer. Look at him go. There's lightning with a hammer." And after a while, he finally asked us, he said, "Why do you guys keep calling me lightning with a hammer? Is it because I'm so fast?" And we're like, "No. It's because you never strike the same place twice." All right, I thought maybe a few more laughs with that one. I saved the best for last. And if you don't laugh at this one, I know you just didn't get it, because this is hilarious. Before I found the love of my life, before I met Sonia, many of you aren't aware that I dated a female carpenter. So we were dating for a long time, and we had this really good relationship. I'm sorry that this is the way you're finding out about it. Thought we were going places, but she had a problem. She had an addiction. She was addicted to tools, my female carpenter girlfriend. So she kept going out and buying tools, more hammers, more wrenches, more tape measures, and things like that. And finally, I had to give her an ultimatum. I said, look, dear, it's either me or the tools. And unfortunately, she chose the latter. Yeah, the latter. And now we can go home. All right, so why all the carpenter jokes? Because today we are talking about foundations. And this is something that we have heard before. We know the story. We sang this song ever since we were little kids. The wise man built his house upon the rock. The foolish man built his house upon the sand. We've known this our whole lives. And I was thinking of this passage this week. This part. Now we're going into the true stuff. This week, a friend of ours reached out to Sonia and me, and I won't get into the details. Many of you will know this friend, but I won't tell you who it is yet until it's all finalized. But this friend of ours that's living in Harrisonburg is going to move to Stanton. They are buying a house here locally. They were looking at a house, and they asked Glenn and Kathy to go through it as professionals, but they also asked if Sonia and I could kind of drive past the property and see some things like maybe that they didn't see. What do we know about the property? What do we know about the community? They're looking at a house just up here in the Hillcrest area. So they asked if I could drive by, and sure enough, I did that. I went by, and I kind of stopped and made the neighbors a little bit nervous, but, you know, they have a for sale sign. They're probably getting used to that. And I looked at the house, and it's a well-kept house, a simple house, not too old, but it's got a very nice backyard. There's room for a garden one day if they want to put up a garden or a soccer goal or to have like a large area for hosting like barbecues and things like that. We looked at the structure of the house. It's a cute house. It's simple. And it's in this neighborhood back here. It's a place that looks like it's well kept. The entire community looks well kept and maintained. It doesn't look like a place where there's a lot of crime in that area. A well kept up neighborhood. And we started looking at the distances to various places. It's very, very easy to come down here on a Saturday to the farmer's market. That would appeal to these friends of ours. A little extra walk you can get yourself to Gypsy Hill Park. That was also appealing to them. A short maybe bike ride you can get downtown and walk around and see the beautiful architecture, to take in all of the food that's downtown. It's a good selling point for many of us. Maybe take a train ride if you have an opportunity. If not at the train depot, at the Gypsy Hill Park. It's just, same thing, different scale. Looked at where they were close. They're right close by the Shelburne Middle School. And if they had kids, they could grow up and go to Ware Elementary, go to Shelburne Middle School, where my kids went for their schooling as well. The woman is an educator by training, and she could teach at the school or work in the libraries there if she ever wanted to switch jobs. So I'm thinking about all these things that would make this house a good place to live, a good place to start a family. And we're thinking about things like location. We're thinking about things like neighborhood. I didn't tell them, but you could live close to Randall and Crystal if you live up here. Be walking distance from West Side Pool. I about threw up the sign. I didn't, the West Side Pool. All these things were coming to mind, the location, the geographical proximity to various landscapes or architecture, things to see, things to do. And I talked about like the house itself being cute and it looks like it's well kept, and all these things went through my mind of that would make this a good house for this young couple. But you know what never crossed my mind? The foundation. I never stopped to even look at the foundation. Of course, that's not something you think about, really, is it? You don't think about it unless you're a professional builder. Maybe Glenn checked out the foundation a little bit. First time you're thinking of that? Most people don't think of the foundation. If you were asked to check out a house, how many people here were like, oh, let's check out the foundation? No, that's not exciting. Much of it's below grade. You don't see it. You don't know what's going on. It is just not exciting to think about the foundation. What do you have? You have some footers, usually underground, that somebody has to pour, and they place the rebar there for some reinforcement. I guess that's what the and the rebar stands for, reinforcement bar. Boom, learn something new every day. And then the exciting things come. What comes next? A couple flights of block. Who gets excited about block? Like, that's nothing, no. Like, woohoo, not even like those kind of blocks. Like building blocks. No, like it's concrete cinder blocks. That's not exciting. So all these things that go into a house that make a house so important or make it structurally sound, right over my head, I didn't think of it, didn't give it any thought whatsoever. But even though a foundation isn't something we usually think about, it's really something we need to pay attention to. Because we also know very well that if you don't have a good foundation, that it tends to end up poorly. This is not the house that they were looking at, by the way. They got a really good deal on it, man. It's really important to take a look at that foundation, to make sure that it's sturdy and it will hold up. Because everything else is built upon that. And if that foundation is not sound, the thing will come crashing down. So we know this story. We know it from the songs. We know it from the scripture. I didn't realize how many passages or how many songs there are in our hymnals. Curtis is like, should I sing this one? Because we have like so many to choose from that draw upon this story. And this would have been well known in Jesus' time. Think about where he was preaching and teaching, along the Sea of Galilee. How many times in the New Testament do we find stories where storms just pop up? Like Jesus is out, walking on water. A storm pop up. Jesus is sleeping on the ship and has to get out and calm the storm. On the Sea of Galilee, the storms just pop up, and they're usually really intense, give very little warning. They're right along the beach, so you know there's going to be something there. What's along the beach? Seagulls, yes. Sand. There's sand along there. They're close to the wilderness, close to the desert. The people knew sand. They knew what it was, what it did. They knew rocks. It's a rocky terrain. If you go in that region, it's really hard to produce large fields and crops agriculturally because of the soil. So Jesus gives this example, this teaching, build upon a firm foundation. Foundations aren't exciting, but they're so important. They shouldn't be out of sight, out of mind. They should be out of sight, but definitely on our mind. And we look at the structures that were built even in Jesus' day. Some of them continue to stand today, 2,000 years later. This is a picture of what's known as the Western Wall in Jerusalem at the temple. The very lower couple flights of stone there were placed while Jesus was still walking the earth. Jesus saw these stones being placed. And there's times in the New Testament when Jesus and the disciples are walking out of the temple, and the disciples are like, hey, look at these stones, they're huge. I think he was talking about stones like those that have existed on the Western Wall, also known as the Wailing Wall, for 2,000 years. And the only reason those are still standing today, 2,000 years later, is because they were built upon a firm foundation. Foundations should not be out of sight, out of mind. They might be out of sight, but definitely should be on our mind. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to make some people angry at me, because I'm going to tell you a few things that I think are not to be our foundation. Things that the church often assumes to be foundational. And what I'm going to do today is I'm going to give a little bit of a sermon on why we should have a Christocentric hermeneutic. Calm yourself down. In spite of all the other hermeneutics available to us, as we end this sermon on the Mount teaching, I think it's appropriate to remember that Jesus is to be the center of our life. So let's first look real quick at this scripture again, at least one verse, and then I'll look at some of the things that might make you a little uncomfortable at first. Verse 24. The first verse from our passage that Dwayne read for us. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. All right, we know the part about the wise man building his house upon the rock. This is the central metaphor that Jesus is using in this passage. The wise man, the foolish man, this contrasting imagery, the rock and the sand. But again, who is the wise person? He just says it kind of in passing. It's the person who builds upon the words of Jesus. Full stop. No explanation. Here he is at the end of his most famous sermon, these last 3 chapters, and he ends it by saying, this teaching of mine should be your foundation. Build upon anything else, and it's like a foolish man that builds upon the sand. It will eventually break down and fall apart. So that so far doesn't seem too threatening, but nobody brought eggs today. Oh, okay. AJ, did you bring eggs? They're over there? Okay, you don't have any with you. No rotten eggs, no tomatoes. All right, so we're safe. The tomatoes are out there. Okay, so if at some point you feel it necessary to egg or tomato the preacher, there are opportunities. Jesus says, build your house upon these teachings. What doesn't he say? He doesn't say, build upon the church. Now, this is one of the pictures that I took a number of years ago. This is probably one of the favorite pictures that I've ever taken. This is from an evening stroll that we took in Stanton, Virginia. This is, of course, St. Francis's Church in downtown Stanton. We caught it just as the moon is right above the spire of the bell tower. And this picture here is a little bit grainy, but on my phone it looks really amazing. And I just want to be honest, I love the church. I love so many things about the church. Not just that church building, but I mean the church in general. I love the diversity of the church. I love the fact that I could go into St. Francis's, or I could go downtown in some of the other big old buildings. I can go into Trinity Episcopal Church, which is one of the oldest churches in the entire area. And then one of the things that you notice when you first walk in is what? There's all these stained glass windows. You see the rich mahogany furniture and the wooden structures above your head. You see all the candles and you can hear all the bells. You smell the incense. Behind the sanctuary is this huge organ built locally here by Taylor and Booty. Beautiful structures, beautiful organizations. I love going through these old buildings. And even though I feel very at home there, at the same time, I can feel very distant. In a good way, like small, like this is something bigger than me. I love walking through these high church congregations and being a part of them, but I also love being a part of our simple Mennonite churches as well, where we have these hard white walls and these simple pews, and we sing 4-part harmony. And there's something about the church. I just love the community. I love the potlucks. Can I get an amen? I love this church. I love the church. So what I'm about to say isn't meant to be a criticism of some guy that just wants to dump on the church. I love the church. And I love the fact that there's so much diversity. If it wasn't for diversity, if I think about AJ's eggs, if you had to eat eggs every morning for breakfast, simple salt and pepper in the eggs is going to be good, right? How do you like your eggs, AJ? You don't eat eggs. Because you can sell the eggs for more money than you can eat, right? All right, Gary says ketchup. Ketchup? So I could eat AJ's eggs every morning with ketchup, but I would like a little variety, wouldn't you? Like every now and then you want to bring some cheese and you want some spices, some herbs. I want a little paprika in my eggs, a little hot sauce every now and then. And I like the diversity in the church. But notice Jesus doesn't say, build upon the church. And that's because the church, even though it is a way of meeting God and experiencing God, the way the church operates is through human beings like you and me. And we human beings, we have our faults, we have our failures, we make mistakes. If you think about one of the greatest transformations in church history, one of the greatest movements, and I'm not trying again to be dumping on any one church tradition or another, but one of the greatest movements within church history is the Protestant Reformation. And we know that situation where Martin Luther, he goes and he takes his 95 theses and he nails them to the door of the church in Wittenberg. These are 95 complaints he has against the church. This guy's been thinking about it for a little bit, right? Hopefully your list isn't that long right now. Lowell's like, pastor goes too long. One of Luther's biggest complaints against the church was the selling of indulgences. This idea that if you paid the church a certain amount of money, they would give you this get out of purgatory free card, not for yourself, but for your recently departed, dearly beloved family member. There's probably never been a better fundraising approach than the selling of indulgences. And this would be a time to remind you, we need a new air conditioner. So if this ticked off Luther, this is one of the things that set off the Protestant Reformation. And you know what? Years later, the Catholic Church came around and said, you know what? We were wrong. Luther was right, at least on this. So often in the midst of it, we can't see the failures of our church. We don't see the mistakes that we're making, the mistakes that those around us are making. The phrase is, a fish doesn't know the water they swim in. So years later, the Catholic Church came around and said, yeah, Luther was kind of right on that one. Other things they didn't agree with him on. But that one, they stopped selling indulgences. Think more recently, and again, I'm not trying to name a certain denomination, but the largest Protestant denomination in the United States. Do you know how that denomination came about? It was over the inclusion of slave owners on a mission board. So the largest denomination in the Protestant tradition in the United States, there was division between the North and the South. The Southern members of the denomination, when it was unified, they wanted to put certain board members in place on the mission board as delegates for the church. The Northern churches said, we can't have people who own other people in a position of power and authority. And the people in the South said, guess what then? We're going to start our own denomination. And they did. The church doesn't often see its mistakes in the middle of it all. It's not until afterward that this church came around and repented for that decision. So I, again, am not trying to dump on the church. I love the church. But notice, Jesus doesn't say, build upon the church. He says, build upon my teachings. Those two things are not always synonymous. And we in the Mennonite Church, we have a huge history of making our own mistakes. It's not just our denomination. It's not just those denominations. All of the church has been guilty of covering up scandals, of embezzlement, of various things that I don't even need to get into. You know the shortcomings of the church. We're made up of fallen people, imperfect people like you and me. So that's the first one. Nobody threw eggs. We're good so far. The second thing that Jesus does not say to build upon is the Bible. Now, I love the Bible. I love the scriptures. I read them frequently. I study them. I write sermons on the scriptures. Hopefully you think that when I write a sermon that I at least have read the text before I got up here on a Sunday morning. But the problem with the scriptures isn't the text itself. I believe that the scriptures are inspired by God. The problem is there's no such thing as a disinterested reader of the scriptures. We all bring our own background, our own experience into the reading of the text and the interpretation of the text. And this was something that I covered very thoroughly a few weeks ago as we talked about the antitheses of the Sermon on the Mount. The "you have heard it said, but I say unto you" parts of the text. And there's so many people that just say things like, and you've heard this before, right? I don't interpret the text. I don't interpret the Bible. I just read it. And usually to that person I want to say, hooey, something. Have to clean it up a little bit. No, you try to be nice because a lot of times people just don't think about it. But everybody reads the text through their experiences. Everybody reads it through some sort of lens. That is the crux of hermeneutics. We all read it because of where we've come from in a certain way, because of who has come before us, who has told us what to believe. We read it in those ways. Let me give you a few examples. I'll take that down because he scares me. When I was first starting here at Stanton Mennonite Church, I preached a sermon on Joshua 24. I came into the congregation, I preached this sermon. I think it went pretty well. Joshua 24 is the story just before the Israelites go into the promised land. Joshua stands up before the congregation, gives this long speech, and it ends with this phrase, choose for yourself today whom you will serve, but as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. So I talked in that sermon in this congregation at Stanton Mennonite Church. I used these different examples of what we might see as modern idols, the things that we might worship. Go ahead and yell some things out while I take a drink. Like, what are the common modern day 21st century idols that we see? Money. Fancy cars. Sports. Laughter. Politics, yes. Power, authority, image, all these sorts of things are modern day idols. You're hitting the nail on the head. Go back to that one. Call back. These are the sort of things I preach on, and everybody, I get the amens from the congregation, feeling good, we understand this. So that was a Sunday morning. That same week, Sonia and I traveled to Trinidad and Tobago. I went to seminary with a guy that grew up and was a pastor in Trinidad. And he had invited us to come and help with Bible school that summer. And let me just be honest, like, I'm not a big traveler, but if you get to go to a foreign country or a strange place and go with a native of that place, like, you will never see it in the same way again. Like, it's so much better. Like, you could take your iPhone and find recommendations and go see the Mojave Desert or whatever. But if you get a chance to go to Trinidad with a local Trinidadian, you're not going to beat that. So we get to go and see things that many people don't see. We get to see the sea turtles laying eggs on the shore at Trinidad. We get to go and eat off of the street cars and what they call doubles. This chana wrap is sometimes referred to. It's just, I can't describe it for you. It's wonderful. It's amazing. We've tried to reproduce it, but you just can't do that. You've got a local person telling you these things, and we got to see all these different places in Trinidad and experiences. I got to play cricket along the beach with local Trinidadians. I don't know how to play cricket. I still don't know how to play, but I got to swing a bat, and it was fun. These experiences are priceless. If you ever go to a kind of third world country, though, if they know that you're a preacher, or if you've ever preached in any way, shape, or form, what are they going to do? They're going to ask you to preach that Sunday. And that's kind of generous to say ask you to preach. They're going to let you know usually the day of. Like, you go a Sunday morning, hey, pastor, you're preaching today. I knew this was a possibility. So I go to Trinidad. I had just preached on Joshua 24. I take my sermon script with me because I know this might happen. And I at least got about 12 hours warning. I got noticed the night before, hey, pastor, you're preaching tomorrow. And it's easy enough. I've got my text right here. And I pull out that text and I preach on Joshua 24, the same sermon I preached here at Stanton Mennonite. Now, one of the things my friend Ganesh did was he also took us on a tour of a local temple there in Trinidad. If you don't know the story behind Trinidad, half of Trinidad's population comes from India, from indentured servants that were brought in to help with the sugar harvest and crop. So a lot of Indo-Trinidadians. So one of the major religions in Trinidad is Hinduism. And on the island, the small island of Trinidad, you will find the largest statue dedicated to the Hindu deity Hanuman. Hanuman is the monkey god. That's literally what they call him. So this is an 85-foot tall statue of Hanuman. It's a part of a temple, and this is that's not me, but a person, so you can kind of see to scale. This is a normal, like 8 or 10-foot high wall. You can walk around, you can see this, you can smell the incense. And we were taken to see this temple of Hanuman by my Indo-Trinidadian friend. I had preached that sermon on Joshua 24 right here in this congregation. People gave the same examples as what you gave: sports, money, power, cars, authority. Those are the sorts of things that tripped us up as idols. And then as I'm sitting there, I'm reading this text for the first time in this congregation, I feel the chills go through my body. But if serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, then choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve, whether the gods your ancestors served beyond the Euphrates or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you are living. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. Tell me that doesn't hit different in Trinidad than it does here. I think of other examples. Let's take it up a notch. I went through, so we're almost back to school. I went through K through 12, right? Like everybody here. You all went through K through 12 school, right? I went through college. I spent 5 years as an undergrad, let's be honest. It took a little bit longer. I enjoyed college. And then 3 years of seminary. And I went through, that's 20 years of formal education for me. And when I was in my probably early 30s, I decided I wanted to do a little bit more studying. So I signed up to take a class at Union Presbyterian Seminary in Richmond. Lowell's father is a graduate of Union as well. After 20 years of formal education, I realized when I signed up to take this class with Samuel Roberts that in 20 years, I had never taken a class with an African-American professor. 20 years of formal education, never had I studied with a person of color. And I didn't think much of it. I signed up to take this class, and I learned a little bit about Dr. Roberts. Turns out he actually knew, personally, Martin Luther King Jr. Well, of course, that's what you do. But I come into this class thinking I'm a know-it-all 30-year-old pastor. I've been doing this for a while, and I come in with my kind of sense of superiority, and I'm going to teach them a thing or two. And I come in with my Christocentric hermeneutic, and I still stand firm to my Christocentric hermeneutic. But I realize that not everybody reads the scriptures the same way as I do. Because I found out that while the teachings of Jesus, what is the canon within the canon for the Mennonite church is, of course, the Sermon on the Mount. He explained to me that the canon within the canon in his tradition, the African American church tradition, is not the Sermon on the Mount. It is the Exodus event. And when you read all of the scriptures through the Exodus, it changes the way you interpret this. So while I read through things like peace and justice and mutual aid, I read the scriptures through that lens. He said his tradition reads through the lens of liberation. So here's how I would sum it up. We don't build upon the church. We don't build upon the Bible. We build upon the one who is worshipped in the church. We build upon the one who is revealed in the Bible. We don't build upon the church, but we worship, but the one worshipped in the church. We don't build upon the Bible, but the one revealed in the text. That might seem like a small difference to you, but I think that in the end it can make a huge difference as well. Because the problem is we are humans. We make mistakes. We come with our own experiences. We come with our own background. But I stand firm, and all due respect to the other traditions, that I believe that the right way, the best way, is to read through Jesus. Because what does Jesus say here? He says, build upon this rock. And what is that rock? It is the teachings that he brings. We can find in other places in the passage. Ephesians 2, Paul affirms this as well. Christ Jesus himself is the chief cornerstone. He is to be our foundation. And you might be saying, well, what about, I know what you're thinking, what about whenever, Jesus says this about Peter? Jesus looks at Peter after Peter has made this profession of faith, says, you are the Messiah, the Son of the living God. Peter says, and I tell you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overcome it. In Greek, it literally says, and I tell you that you are Petros, and on this Petra I will build my church. Is he building upon teaching of Peter, on the person of Peter? That's one interpretation. I think that he's saying that upon your profession of faith, where you said, I am the Messiah, that is what we're going to build the church upon. And then we'll go one more. Some of you have heard of this guy named Menno Simons. If you've not heard of him, that's what our denomination is named after. And when Menno Simons would write something, he would often put a Bible verse at the end, because that's what good, pious people do. Little sign off on the end of your email. Do you recall what Menno Simons signed his works with? I'm looking at Marlene. Come on now. The Fraktur that we have sitting over here references this passage as well, 1 Corinthians 3:11. For no one can lay any foundation other than the one already laid, which is Jesus Christ. So I believe that, yes, we need to be going to church. Yes, we do need to be joining together in worship. We do need to be a part of a community. We do need to study our scriptures. But we need to remember that each of those is influenced by human beings. We keep coming back to the words written in red. Jesus himself said to build upon the foundation that is his words and his actions. As he finishes the Sermon on the Mount, he encourages his disciples to build upon that firm foundation. For anything else that you build upon will go splat. So as a part of our reminder to build upon that firm foundation, today we will be celebrating the Lord's Supper, communion. It was on the night when Jesus was betrayed and handed over to his enemies that he gathered with his disciples in the upper room. And he took the bread during the meal and he broke it. And he gave it to his disciples and he said, "This is my body broken for you. When you eat of this, do so in remembrance of me." After the meal, he took the cup and he blessed it. And he passed it around. He told the disciples, "Drink of this. This is my blood, the blood of the new covenant. Drink of it, and when you do so in remembrance of me." So I want to invite Sandy and Dwayne to come forward. Sandy will be playing some background music, and Dwayne will be helping me with the communion elements. I invite you to come from the front to the back, to stand, to come to the center aisles, and receive the bread and the cup from Dwayne and myself. And hold on to it until you get back to your seats, and we'll all consume the elements together. So I invite you. All are welcome. And the Mennonite church, in this church especially, I don't try to select who gets to and who doesn't get to take communion. This is not my table. This is the table of Christ. And I believe all are invited to this table. So if you consider yourself a follower of Jesus Christ, you're welcome to partake in this event as well.